The sun was high over the rolling plains, painting the grass in shades of gold and green. The wind whispered across the tall blades, carrying with it the scent of wildflowers and the distant smoke of cooking fires. Across this open land rode a woman, her posture proud, her eyes alert. She was of the Apache people, a warrior in her own right, strong and swift, riding a horse that moved like it belonged to the wind itself. She rode not for pleasure but for purpose, scouting, moving, observing the land as her people had taught her for generations. The plains stretched endlessly around her. She felt a sense of freedom in the vast openness, a clarity that came only when the horizon seemed to reach forever. Her horse trotted steadily, its hooves raising small clouds of dust. She adjusted the reins, scanning the land for signs, tracks of animals, broken branches, the faint glimmer of water far ahead. Every detail mattered. Every small movement was a message from the land. Suddenly the horse stumbled. It was a hidden rock, barely noticeable under the tall grass, but enough to unbalance even a skilled rider. The woman's world tilted in an instant. She tried to correct, but the momentum carried her forward. The ground rushed to meet her, and with a hard thud she hit the earth. Pain exploded in her leg, sharp and unforgiving. She cried out, her voice cutting across the quiet plains. The horse snorted and shook itself, circling back nervously. She could hear its hooves tapping lightly as it pawed at the ground. She tried to move her leg, but the pain was immediate and searing. A sharp, heavy weight told her that something was broken. She gritted her teeth, biting back a cry that threatened to escape. She had been trained to endure pain, to remain strong even when the body betrayed her, but this was different. This was not a wound easily ignored. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, shadows stretching longer with every passing minute. She called out for help, her voice hoarse now, strained and tired. But the plains remained silent, save for the distant cries of birds and the rustle of the wind. She tried to calm herself, to focus on breathing steadily, but the isolation was heavy. She had been alone many times, but never in such helplessness. The loneliness pressed on her like the weight of the earth itself. Just when hope seemed faint, a figure appeared on the horizon. At first she thought it might be another traveler, or worse, someone from a hostile tribe. But as the figure drew closer, she saw the slow, careful gait of a man who did not rush. He was carrying no weapons openly, moving with a careful purpose, scanning the land as he walked. The man was a farmer, known to few in the nearby settlements. He lived on the edge of the plains, where towns were nothing more than distant outlines on the horizon. He had lived a life of quiet solitude, tending his fields and animals, watching the seasons change without much interference from others. But when he saw the woman lying in the grass, he did not hesitate. Fear had never been his companion in the way it was for most. Curiosity and compassion guided him now. He approached slowly, hands raised slightly to show he meant no harm. The woman tensed at first, instincts trained for survival kicking in. Her eyes narrowed, watching him closely. Years of caution did not leave her easily, and trust had to be earned. But there was something in his movement, a careful gentleness that allowed her to relax just a little. "Can you move?" he asked, his voice calm and steady. I cannot," she admitted, her words tight with pain. "My leg, I cannot move it." He knelt beside her, examining the leg from a distance before gently touching her shoulder to steady her. "It's broken," he said simply. "We need to get you to somewhere safe." She nodded, biting back the sting of pride that wanted her to handle this alone. She knew the truth. Alone, she would not survive the night. With careful hands, he helped her onto a small wagon he had brought, improvising supports and padding to make her more comfortable. He spoke little, letting actions carry the weight of his intentions. The journey to his farmhouse was slow. Dust rose around them in small clouds, settling on her clothes and hair, but she paid it little mind. The pain in her leg demanded her attention, and yet, in between the twinges of agony, she watched the man. There was something in his quiet demeanor, the way he treated her with respect without rushing or demanding, that drew a small flicker of hope in her chest. At the farmhouse, he helped her inside, settling her carefully on a bed he had prepared. The room was modest, simple in every way, but clean and welcoming. He tended her leg with careful precision, using bandages, splints, and the tools of his humble trade. He spoke to her softly, asking about her comfort, offering water, and keeping her reassured. Over the fire that evening, as the sun dipped behind the horizon, they began to talk. At first it was small talk, simple observations about the plains, the wind, the animals. But gradually deeper stories emerged. She told of her people, of the Apache traditions, the knowledge of the land passed down through generations, and the pride in living in harmony with nature. She spoke of the challenges her people faced, the constant vigilance required to protect themselves from outsiders and danger. The farmer, in turn, spoke of his life. He described the endless work of the farm, the quiet days spent in solitude, the satisfaction of seeing crops grow and animals thrive. He told her of the loneliness that came with living far from towns, where few visitors ever came and neighbors were distant. She listened, surprised by the depth of humanity in someone she had first seen as just a simple man. Night fell, and the plains were cloaked in darkness. The woman, exhausted from pain and travel, felt herself relax in a way she had not felt in years. The farmer remained near, tending the fire and occasionally checking her comfort. In his quiet vigilance, she sensed a rare kind of strength, not the strength of warriors or hunters, but the strength of someone who could act with courage and compassion when it mattered most. As she drifted toward sleep, her thoughts wandered. She had expected the plains to be lonely, expected that help would be unlikely and fleeting. But here, in this small farmhouse far from towns and tribes, she felt a small spark of hope. Perhaps not all humans were the same. Perhaps some could be trusted even when the world seemed cold and indifferent. Morning came, soft and golden. The farmer brought her water and breakfast, careful to ensure she could manage both despite her injury. She watched him move about the room, performing small tasks with ease and attention to detail. It was clear he had lived this way for years in quiet routine, finding purpose in the simplest of actions. Over the next few days, he helped her regain small abilities. Sitting upright, adjusting her position, learning to bear slight weight on her injured leg, all were steps forward. During this time, their conversations deepened. She taught him how to read tracks in the dirt, how to notice subtle signs in the environment that often went unnoticed by ordinary people. He listened, fascinated by her knowledge, impressed by her intelligence and strength, even as she was vulnerable. In turn, he showed her practical ways to navigate the farm, to use tools efficiently, to understand the rhythms of work and patience. Slowly, a bond grew between them. It was not love, not yet, but a mutual respect and understanding that often took years to form between people who had been strangers. One evening, as the wind rustled through the fields outside, she looked at him and spoke softly, almost to herself. "You are not like the others," she said. "You do not judge. You do not fear." He shrugged, smiling faintly. "I suppose I just believe in helping where I can. It doesn't matter who you are." Her eyes studied him carefully. For so long she had been surrounded by caution, by the need to defend herself and her people. Yet here was someone who offered safety without demand, help without expectation. And in that she felt something she had not felt in years, relief and a strange sense of trust. The nights passed and slowly her leg healed. Each small victory, the ability to stand, to step carefully, to move without as much pain, was celebrated quietly between them. They faced small challenges together, a sudden storm that tested the farmhouse roof, a fox that tried to raid the henhouse, and the ever-present worry of strangers wandering the plains. Each time they managed through cooperation, combining her knowledge and his experience, showing the quiet power of human ingenuity and courage. By the time her leg was strong enough for longer walks, the woman knew her journey across the plains would soon continue, but she also knew that something had changed. The plains, once endless and indifferent, now felt alive with possibility, and the farmer, once just a solitary man, had become more than a helper. He had become a companion in a shared understanding of life, survival and courage. The sun set again over the plains, painting the sky in oranges and purples. She sat by the fire, her leg now resting comfortably, and looked at the farmer. "I will return to my people soon," she said quietly. He nodded, understanding the truth in her words. "And they will be lucky to have you back," he replied. In that moment, across the quiet farmhouse, a connection had formed, one born of necessity, sustained by respect, and strengthened by human kindness. The plains outside were still vast and unyielding, but within those walls, a bond had grown that neither distance nor danger could easily break. And so, the first part of their story ended, not with grand battles or loud victories, but with small quiet triumphs, the triumph of trust, of courage, and of human compassion. The morning sun spilled over the plains, turning the dew on the grass into tiny sparks of light. The Apache woman had rested well overnight, her leg now stable and her body regaining strength. She sat by the window of the farmhouse, watching the horizon stretch endlessly, thinking about the journey that still awaited her. The farmer moved quietly in the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast, his presence steady and comforting. "Your leg is strong enough for walking today," he said gently, placing a small plate in front of her. "We can start slowly and I'll help you." She nodded, appreciating the care without words. She had traveled far in her life, seen many faces, and yet this quiet patience was rare. As she took small bites of bread and fruit, she felt a sense of security she had not known in years. After breakfast, the farmer helped her outside. The air was crisp, filled with the earthy scent of soil and grass. Together, they practiced walking in small circles around the farmhouse yard. At first, each step was cautious, measured. Pain still lingered, but it was manageable. She leaned slightly on him, and he adjusted his pace to match hers. "Steady," he encouraged. "Take it slow. There's no rush." As the day passed, they worked together on small tasks. She learned to help with minor chores around the farm, lifting small loads, tending animals, and carrying water. Each task strengthened her leg and muscles, giving her confidence. In return, she taught him how to read the land differently, how to follow the subtle signs of animals, how to track small movements in the grass, and how to anticipate the weather changes from clouds and wind. The farmer listened intently, fascinated by her knowledge. He had spent years learning the ways of farming, but her understanding of the land was deeper, older, and instinctive. He realized that there was a world beyond his own fields, one full of skills and wisdom he had never considered. By mid-afternoon, they decided to explore a nearby stream. It was shallow with smooth stones, and the woman carefully stepped from rock to rock with his assistance. The water sparkled under the sun, and the gentle current carried a peaceful sound that made the plain seem even more alive. "This is beautiful," she said softly, smiling. "It reminds me of rivers near my people's lands." He nodded. "Nature has a way of teaching us patience and resilience," he replied. "Sometimes it's quieter than people, but it shows us more than we realize." As they walked along the stream, a rustling sound came from the tall grass nearby. Both paused, alert. A small group of wild animals, foxes and rabbits, emerged, more curious than threatening. The woman instinctively observed, noting their behavior and movements. The farmer laughed quietly, amazed at her attentiveness. "You notice everything," he said. She shrugged, a small grin forming. "We have to. Survival depends on it." They returned to the farmhouse as the sun began to dip toward the horizon. The evening brought with it a cool breeze, and the plains were painted in gold and violet. They sat by the fire again, sharing stories in a rhythm that felt natural. The woman spoke of her childhood, the lessons of her elders, and the journeys she had taken across the plains. She described the connection her people had with every living thing, the respect for animals, plants, and even the winds. The farmer shared his own experiences, tales of hard winters, of planting seeds and watching them grow, and the loneliness that sometimes weighed heavily on him. She listened, finding unexpected comfort in his words. Here was a man who understood effort, who had patience, and who did not judge her by her origin or her strength. A few days later, she was ready to walk further, to explore beyond the farmhouse yard. The farmer prepared a simple pack with water, food, and blankets. "You need to practice moving longer distances," he said. "It will help when you return to your people." They traveled slowly across the plains, her steps growing more confident with each mile. The woman was careful, but her joy was evident. She had learned the patience of recovery, and now she was testing her strength, feeling it return in every movement. Along the way, they encountered a problem. A small group of strangers had entered the plains, scouting near the farmer's property. They looked suspicious, and the woman immediately sensed danger. Her training as an Apache warrior kicked in. She crouched low, scanning the terrain, noting every shadow and sound. The farmer stood quietly beside her, observing her methodical approach. "What should we do?" he asked softly. "We wait," she replied. "And we watch." The strangers moved closer, unaware that they were being observed. The woman pointed to a narrow path between rocks, hidden from view. "If we move carefully, we can avoid them," she explained. They followed her directions, using the rocks and terrain for cover. slipping past without being noticed. The farmer was impressed by her skill and knowledge of the land. Her abilities were remarkable even in recovery, and he realized the depth of strength humans could have when connected to their environment. After the danger passed, they continued their journey. The plains stretched endlessly, but they moved confidently, each step reinforcing trust between them. The woman occasionally glanced at the farmer, appreciating his steady support, his careful attention, and the way he respected her independence. She had been helped by strangers before, but rarely with such genuine care. One evening, as the sun set and painted the sky in fiery shades, the woman stopped to rest near a small hill. She looked over the horizon, the plains bathed in gold. "I must return to my people soon," she said quietly. The farmer nodded. "I know, but remember, you have strength here too. You survived more than anyone expected, and you did it with courage." A gentle silence fell between them. They shared no words, only understanding. The bond they had formed was more than gratitude. It was a connection of respect, trust, and recognition of shared humanity. In the following days, the woman's leg continued to strengthen. She practiced walking and running short distances, often racing the farmer across the fields in light-hearted challenges. Laughter, rare and precious, filled the farmhouse in the plains. The farmer admired her determination and resilience. He had spent a lifetime in solitude, but now he understood the joy of shared effort, of connection through experience and challenge. Their cooperation was tested once more when a storm rolled across the plains. Dark clouds gathered quickly, wind whipping through the grass and carrying the scent of rain and earth. Trees bent under the gusts, and the woman and the farmer worked together to secure the farmhouse and animals. Their coordinated effort was seamless, each movement complementing the other. They carried buckets, tied loose boards, and led frightened animals to safety. The storm passed, leaving behind wet earth and a renewed sense of accomplishment. "You are remarkable," the farmer said as they finally rested, soaked but smiling. "I have never met anyone like you." "And you," she replied, "are not like anyone I expected to find. You are patient, strong, and kind. Rare qualities in the world today." Finally, the day came when the woman was ready to leave. Her leg healed, her strength regained, and her spirit renewed. She prepared for the journey back to her people. She packed light, carrying only essential belongings, and the farmer helped her mount her horse safely. Before she rode away, she turned to him. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything. You have taught me that not all humans are the same. Some are brave, some are kind, some are capable of seeing the world through eyes that do not judge. I will not forget this." The farmer smiled, a mixture of pride and quiet satisfaction in his expression. "Take care of yourself," he said, "and remember that courage is not only in strength but in kindness. You carry it with you now." She nodded and gave a small smile, feeling the weight of his words. With one last glance at the farmhouse and the fields that had been her sanctuary, she urged her horse forward, moving toward the horizon. The plains were open, vast, and unpredictable, but she faced them with confidence and hope. As she rode, the farmer watched from the farmhouse. He felt a sense of fulfillment he had never known. The quiet life he had lived was enriched by this encounter, by the lessons learned and shared, and by the bond formed in the simplest yet most profound ways. The plains were quiet again, but both of them carried the memory of the days they had faced together, days of healing, learning, and discovering the depth of human strength and kindness. She would return to her people, stronger and wiser, carrying the memory of a human who had shown her compassion and courage. And he would remain on his farm, changed forever by the encounter, understanding that even in solitude, humanity's true power lay in empathy, respect, and courage. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the plains in shades of purple and gold. The wind whispered softly across the grass, carrying with it a sense of completion, of lessons learned and connections formed. Two lives, once strangers, had intersected in a way that would leave a lasting impact. Proof that even in the vast, unpredictable world, humanity could rise above fear, embrace kindness, and create bonds that transcended distance and expectation. And as night fell, the plains held a quiet peace. The Apache woman rode steadily toward her home, her spirit renewed, while the farmer remained behind, tending his land with a new understanding of the power of human connection. Both had faced challenges, Both had grown stronger, and both carried with them the knowledge that courage, kindness, and respect could change lives in ways that nothing else could.